guys? Welcome back to another video where in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how to master with Izotope Music Production Suite. They have this plugin called Ozone. Um, and the ideology here is that, like, the ozone is the outer layer, and that's kind of what mastering is. Like, after you've done everything, you've mixed, you've put together your track, you've put the effects. You can see on my lead vocals I have my effects, right? I have my auto tune. I have the Nectar 3, which I showed you guys in the last video, right? Which has everything, my EQ, my compressing, all that stuff, right? I also put some reverb and some delays and some saturation. Um, and with my vocals, I'm done. I put a Neutron 3 on every single track, right? With the last video. On every single instrument track, right? So you can see on my drums, I have Neutron 3, my 808, I have Neutron 3. And after everything is done, you're ready to master. And mastering, think of it like this, like with mastering, so let me explain it like this. Depending on where you distribute your music, the way you master might be very important, right? Now, if you're just like making a track and you just want to, I don't know, play it in a club or play it in your car, like it's just for you, the levels that we're gonna talk about here in a second may have different meaning, right? Um, but let's say you want to put it on a streaming platform like Spotify. You want to put it on a streaming platform like YouTube or whatever. They have some guidelines that I'm not going to go into too much detail in. I'm just going to try to briefly explain it to you. And then once I do that, hopefully you guys will understand what I'm trying to say here. But let's just say that you have everything done, right? You have your Neutron 3. Your track is done. All it needs to do is to be mastered. So what we'll do here is we'll go to our master track, right? You always master on the master track. And what you'll do is you'll go to multi-channel plugin, go to Izotope, and click on Ozone. I think I have Ozone 9, but whatever, Ozone. You might have 7, 8, 9, whatever one you have. And you'll insert that plugin. I already have it inserted here. Now, mastering has a few things, right? Just remember that you can master. I guess you can master. What is it called? Manually, right? If you know exactly what you want, exactly what you're doing, what your track lacks, you can master manually. But I just want to show you guys the master assistant, right? So let's just say I unbypass this, right? Here's my Ozone 9, right? Um, First of all, what you can see off the back is there's an equalizer, there's a dynamics, which my tracks are not very like I don't need to worry about any kind of dynamics. I handle all those harshnesses with compressing and all that through my mixing process. So every time I use a master assistant, I never have these. I could, but I don't. And then there's a dynamic EQ, which actually is kind of, think of it like a compressor EQ. Like a dynamic EQ is like a EQ with a compressor. Like if I play my track here,
Red lights, stop signs, I still see your face.
you can see right here, this is trying to lower the harshness of the hi hats. This one looks like there's some harsh frequencies here, but basically these are some harsh frequencies that my dynamic EQ has detected, and it's just lowering it using a particular threshold. So once it reaches a particular threshold, it'll lower it by X amount, right? And then this is the one that most people like the most, is the maximizer. The maximizer, think of it like this. You set a ceiling, right? So mastered music should only go to a particular ceiling, right? In other words, the loudest part of your song will be, according to this maximizer, negative zero point 0.3 decibels, right? That's just what I have it set for. I'm gonna show you guys the mixing process. I mean the mastering process here in a second. But I just want to explain the way that these plugins work, right? It sets a ceiling where your volume will never go above negative zero point 0.3, and then the lower you raise this, or the lower you bring this threshold, right? The higher the volume the rest of the track becomes. And I'm gonna demonstrate that for you here in a second. Okay. So again, we have our equalizer, right? Always be very careful with equalizers. Don't make big cuts on master tracks. Okay, make your big cuts on your mixing process, but on your master track, you want to be careful of making too many big cuts, right? I would say anywhere between 2 and -2 personally. Some people would even say 1 and -1, but it just depends, right? Like my track has an 808 and a bass, right? It's a pop song, so it has that piano, it has vocals, right? So there's just certain areas where it's gonna address, right? You have your dynamic EQ and you have your maximizer. Okay, so to get started with this, what you're gonna do, whenever you use Ozone 9, you want to play the loudest part of your song. Okay. My mastering process might look different from you if you're more seasoned at this. What a lot of people like to do is they like to bounce this track um, without anything on the master bus, and then make a new session with just the bounce track and then master it that way. I don't like to do that. You can. I've done that before in the past, but that's the great thing with Ozone 9 is it's a plugin, right? Like if I just disable it, that's basically what I have, right? Also, if your computer has a lot less processing power, that might be a more effective method as well, right? Um, but here's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna highlight our loudest track, right? So for me, that's right here. Okay, I'm gonna loop it. It's looped. Okay. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit Master Assistant here on Ozone. Okay. Boom. Now let me talk about this really quick. If you want a more modern sound, right? That's what you hear today, like in the on the radio and stuff like that. Um, it also determines what plugins it's going to use, right? So you can see if I hit this plus right here, there are some other plugins like a vintage compressor. This is like if you're more old school, you might be used to this. I've never used these before, like on an actual board before, so I don't even care for it. But like if that's your thing, then go for it, right? Um, but it'll use these vintage plugins, okay? Um, but I never use it. I always go with modern. You can also mix with a reference track. I'm not going to show you guys how to do that. It's very simple. Basically, you would click it and then you would have a reference track and load it. And it would ask you to locate it and you click it, and it would basically, oops, and it would basically make cuts and add additions and set the maximizer to the same levels in that reference track. But we're going to go ahead and put manual. Let me explain this intensity, okay? Let's talk about LUFs. LUFs is basically it's a loudness meter. Okay, so like for example, if I were to go and all this stuff comes with your Izotope suite, right? Sometimes what I do also is if you have the Izotope suite, you can go to Izotope and you can go ahead and put on Insight, right? And Insight, you can set it to LUFs, right? This is oops, okay. So if you just want to check your loudness meters, you can check it, right? So like if I were to play this track right here,
I still see your face in the white cars front
you
yard.
can set a target if you want, right? So for example, I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, okay, now I remember. Yeah, Spotify wants you to be at -14 LUFs, and there's different kinds of LUFs. There's a short term, right, like over a particular period. Then there's momentary, and there's integrated. The best way to determine your LUFs, I think, especially if you're trying to master for something like Spotify, and I'm gonna explain it here in a second, is play your song from start to finish with this on and see what the actual integrated LUF is, and you would set your track based off that, right? Um, but let me just talk about it really quick. Spotify, if you're trying to upload this to Spotify or YouTube or any other streaming service, because they're all pretty universal now, um, they recently increased the negative the LUFs to about -14. In other words, if your track is louder than -14 LUFs, Spotify will manually, or not manually, but like they probably have a system where it'll actually lower the volume of your track and basically it'll kind of normalize it, and you kind of don't want that to happen. So that's what the purpose of LUFs is, right? So if I go back to my Ozone 9 here, That's what this is saying, right? If I click on my master assistant, it's talking about the intensity. Where do you want it to be at? Negative 11, negative 12, negative 14, right? So you would actually click low for Spotify, right? Negative, you want it at negative 14 on UFs. Then there's also a CD and streaming. This will basically set the ceiling, right? So like CDs, like you're not streaming it off Spotify. People don't use CDs anymore, but like, let's just say you want to bump this in the club, or you just want this track for yourself, whatever you want on your phone. You can hit CD. If you hit streaming, it'll set it to negative one, because that's another thing is streaming services will actually also want your track to be at a negative one ceiling, right? Which basically makes your track quieter, right? Which basically means the loudest part of your track will be at negative one decibels. So I'm just trying to explain this to you so you guys understand, right? Um, for me, I'm not gonna. And there's a debate going out like right now, especially among mixing and mastering engineers, where a lot of people they actually master at around negative 11, negative 10, negative 9, even for tracks they want to put on Spotify. So there's a lot of arguments. Do in my opinion, just do what sounds right to you, right? Like use your ear and mix and master the track to your liking. Okay. Anyways, let's move on. Let me just move on here. So click modern, click manual, right? I unlooped this, I think. Right. Okay. Make sure you loop your loudest part of the track. For me, it's my bridge, right? Um, I chose CD, and you can actually edit some of these later, and I'll show you. So you'll hit next, and you'll play your track, okay? And it's gonna automatically start making suggested um, like mastering suggestions to you, right? So I'm gonna hit next. It's gonna want me to play the audio.
Red lights, stop signs, I still see your face. The white cars, front yards, can't drive past the places we used to go to. 'Cause I still really love you, baby. No.
Oops, I accidentally exited it out, but that's okay. It's gonna make the same suggestions because I basically used the exact same uh, part of the song to mix and master it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just use the one that I used last time as well. But let's go ahead and just go over it really quick. This is what my mastering assistant did, right? It decided to take out some low end, right? Because I have an 808 booming. You can probably hear it. Like
Red lights, stop.
like if I solo my 808, you can hear it, right? In my drums. And I also have a bass bus. So those are the cuts it made. It made an increase here. And one of the cool things about this is you can actually solo these, right? So like if let's say I want to know what this is right here. If I play
Red lights, stop. Can't drive.
you can solo these frequencies individually to see what it exactly did. And if you don't like it, you can always change it, right? Um, the dynamic EQs I don't even mess with sometimes. But you can also solo these two to see what exactly it's doing as well, right? You can already hear how harsh it is here in this area, right? So I like what it did here, right? It sounds pretty bright and harsh, so it basically took that out. And you can do that with all your frequencies. You can hear that kind of nasty piano frequency that it's trying to cut, right? But it's only at a particular threshold, right? So it's not taking out the vocal, the nice part of the vocal, right? But anyways, those are just examples. The maximizer, let me talk about this really quick, okay? So the maximizer, I put the ceiling at -3. This is something I just listened to in my car. Honestly, the track that you guys hear and see on YouTube, the one that I have on YouTube, um, I actually, these are the same settings, so you can see I did not master it at a negative 14 LUFs. I did not. In fact, I think this is mastered like at negative 9 LUFs, right? Um, Basically, my maximizer suggested not even lowering the threshold, right? So what it sounds like.
Red light, stop sign.
Watch what happens as I lower the maximizer or the threshold of the maximizer. Okay, you can hear basically what it does is the lower parts of the song, it starts raising those lower parts of the song towards the ceiling, if that makes sense, right? So let's just say like that's why how you mix the song is important, right? Like let's say that like you can barely hear my piano, right? As I lower this, because my piano is lower, the level of my piano is going to come up. My vocals are already basically maxed out. In fact, I could probably hit my relay here and lower the volume of my vocals, and I'd have a different kind of mix. But I mix like this purposely because I just love vocals. Okay, but watch what happens as I lower my threshold for my maximizer.
Red lights, stop signs. I still see your face in the white cars, front yards.
Okay, what's happening here is it's increasing the overall volume of the track because it's basically increasing the volume of the lower parts of the track to get closer to the ceiling. So that's why you have to use your ear, right? So what I like to do, this is just what I like to do. You can do it however you want. This, in my opinion, would be the most important part of your mixing or your mastering process is how the overall track sounds with the maximizer. Right? Obviously, you can you can change this, and I'm going to show you a unique trick after this as well. You can edit some of these, but I'll show you how to do that here in a second. But this is the way that I like to determine where I want my levels at. I'll just play it and lower this till I feel like it sounds perfect to me. Okay.
Red lights, stop signs. I still see your face in the white cars, front yards. Can't drive past the places we used to go to, 'cause I still really love.
Now you can hear every single instrument. You can hear the piano. You can hear the drums. You can even hear the 808, which is interesting. You usually have to use headphones to hear that 808. And to me, the harmonies sound very full. So this is where I left my maximizer at, right? I'm not going to go into detail about all these modes, right? Usually I choose a modern or a balance, but this one's pumping. This is just a setting suggested by my ozone, right? Actually, usually I use this one and then I go to modern. Um, but that's basically how you use this. Now let's talk about really quick certain frequencies. So let me just explain this really quick. Whenever I master a song, I have to do checks, right? How does it sound on my phone? How does it sound in headphones? And how does it sound in the car, right? It will sound different. Like it might sound perfect to you. It's having multiple sources to hear your track from. It will sound different to you on different different outsources, right? Like it's gonna sound different on your phone than it will on in your car or in headphones, right? But one really cool feature that this Isotope Suite has is this thing called tonal balance control. It's right here. If you go to Isotope, and basically what this does is, let's say you know the genre, you can even create your own custom track, right? I like your own custom preset. But this is a pop song, so let's just say I pick pop. What this is tonal balance control is a plugin that has analyzed probably what Isotope claims is like the top 1,000 songs of each genre or whatever the number is, and it creates a kind of a level indicator to make sure that your track is around the same, right? So for example, if I were to play this, it's going to start listening to the song and determine where I am on these, right? So according to the best mastered pop songs, where I fall on this will determine on how well I've mastered. Is their logic, right? So if I play it,
Red lights, stop signs, I still see your face in the white cars. Front yards, can't drive past the places we used to go to, 'cause I still really love you, babe.
So you guys can see how my levels are between these squares, which means that according to tonal balance for a pop song, this is a really good master, right? This is a very good master. The lows are where they're supposed to be, right? It's in here. The low mids, the high mids. Also, you can also isolate them by frequency. So if I play this
Red lights,
solo, hold it.
see your face, the white cars. I've passed the place.
So that's what you want, and I highly suggest that you take advantage of tonal balance control and that you use it to identify where your track stands, right? Because that's gonna help you if you're like on the fence. Oh, does my track sound the way that I want it to sound? That's gonna help you, right? Let's just say I'm an even.
Red lights, stop signs, I still see your face in the white cars. Front yards, can't drive past the places we used to go to.
Right, my high end here is a little high, my low end here is a little high. A very cool feature of tonal balance control for mastering is you can actually click here, select source, and you can choose your Ozone 9 or your Ozone EQ, right? So find your Ozone EQ. I think I passed it. It's here somewhere. Where did it go? I have so many things here. So here's my Ozone equalizer, right? This is the equalizer that Ozone made, right? And I can actually just move this around right here to get to the levels that I want to, if I wanted, right? So if I play it.
Red lights, stop signs, I still see your face in the white cars. Front yards, can't drive past the places we used.
Always with mastering, be very careful with EQing. Small cuts, even small cuts can have, because here's the thing is you're not EQing individual pieces of your mix, right? You're actually taking the entire track and raising the level of specific frequencies as a whole. That's why you should only make small cuts, right? Good masters will have small cuts here, okay? Like if I put this down to -4, that's not good, right? It's actually going to be more efficient to go back into one of my tracks and EQ that track to make sure that it gets to the level that I need it to get to, rather than increasing or decreasing a frequency as a whole, right? You don't want to do that. But anyways, you can see how this can be useful, right? So I lower this just a little bit. But this is just genre specific, right? So in this song, I like that 808, so that's why I left it at about -0.7, right? I'm just saying you can use this.
Red lights, stop signs, I still see your face in the white cars. Front
And click fine, and it'll actually make like a more tube-like thing. And you can use this instead.
Red lights, stop signs, I still see your face in the white cars. Front.
Okay. This is a very useful tool, you guys. You can use it on your master tracks. You can use Insight to determine LUFs. And one more quick thing I want to show you guys also is, let's say you are mastering for Spotify, right? There's this very cool feature here. You have to play the song from start to finish. I'm not going to do it completely for you guys, but Spotify wants your ceiling at -1, right? And what you can actually do is you can click Learn Threshold and set your target to -14 and play the song from the beginning, and at the end stop it, and whatever it is, whatever this it's gonna listen to the song as a whole, and it's gonna basically move this right here, this threshold, so that the LUFs over the entire track equal -14. So it's very cool feature. Let me just show you guys how it looks as I play it, right? So like if I play it here, it's gonna start listening to the track, and it's gonna start moving this direction.
I got my driver's license last week, just like we always talked about. 'cause you were so excited for me to finally drive up to your house. Today I drove through the suburbs crying 'cause you were.
Anyways, the idea is you would listen to the track all the way through, and whatever the maximizer lands at is what would be negative 14 LUFs. Obviously, you can change this if you want to negative 9 or whatever, but honestly, I just like to use my ear, right? So I like this way it sounded at negative 3. I like the way this was at about negative 1.1, 1.2. Okay, let me show you guys the before and after, right? So here's the track without Ozone 9. And with, okay? I'm just going to disable the plugin and enable it, right? So bypass.
Red lights, stop signs, I still see your face in the white cars, front yards. Can't drive past the places we used to go to, 'cause I still really love you, baby. I still hear your voice in the traffic.
But yeah, that's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. If you did, if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comment description below as well. And then once again, I will link the actual finished video as well. Anyways, peace out, you guys.
Sidewalks we cross, I still hear your voice in the traffic. We're laughing over all the noise. God, I'm so blue. We're through. I still really love you, babe.